Good morning and welcome to the show. Sorry if you were looking for Ken at 10 this morning, you didn't find it, but you do find myself and the amazing Mr. Bob Harris, MCIOB. Bob, it's great to welcome you back again. Thanks so much for dropping in.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Last time we spoke, Bob, it was quite enlightening for people because if you don't know, those of you that haven't met Bob before or spoken to him before, then we did a podcast with Bob and we've known him for, way over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And he developed a project called the Earth Dome right here in Norbury on Stanford Road. And it was a block of flats with literally, at the time, groundbreaking technology, some of whom would claim that this technology is new. What we're referring to here is air source and ground source heat pumps and the like. And Bob did it all. He's been there, done that, literally bought the T-shirt. So perhaps if we could go over that first of all, Bob, and you could tell people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, okay. So I'm originally a carpenter by trade, but not particularly good at English and maths, but ended up with many qualifications and membership of the Chartered Institute of Building, and ended up as a head of department at Richmond upon Thames College and got EU funding to work with out of work defence workers. And I got a high profile in ecological issues and ecological building, and eventually ended up as a lecturer in ecological building at Kingston University. I've been a member of the environment group in the House of Commons for over 30 years. And my biggest accolade is a phone call from the Prime Minister's press office asking me to comment on some obscure thing I'd talked about in the House of Commons to one of the ministers at one time. My latest conquest is the Bishop. I'm not going to believe this. The Bishop of Manchester. Now, I don't know, well, I'm working on a new project where we're looking at granite dust to mineralize soils, developed in 1873. Now, that's absolutely stunning. It turns out the Bishop of Manchester is in charge of the committee that deals with all the land and buildings owned by the Church of England. And they are, without doubt, the largest landowner in the, well, around about one of the largest landowners in the UK. So that's the sort of people I'm mixing with in the House of Commons. And,
wow, amazing.
To change
and on a much smaller scale, Bob. Yeah, and thank you for that. And on a much smaller scale, of course, you develop the Earth Dome with all these technologies. And the reason why it's coming to the fore now, as we've discussed before, is the energy EPC requirements that are looming for 2025 for new landlords to be a C or above. For existing landlords, of course, it doesn't come in. It's still going through legislation, we understand. But if it comes in, we understand it's going to come in from 2025 for new tenancies. And it's actually, I think, December 2025 is proposed. And then 2028 December, i.e. 2029 more or less, for new, for any existing tenancies that will then roll into the new system. So what it means is that many landlords are going to be considering these green technologies that you have used many times before, and actually probably one of the only people that I know that's had experience with these technologies for over 20 years.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a landlord as well. I've got 4 flats and another property at the coast, various other things. My son-in-law and my daughter run architectural practice, so I'm well versed in all of these things. Now, the issue is that the Earth Dome, which is got external insulation, it's got bags of insulation in the loft, which are purpose built into panels that were put onto this new building, this new roof. They only ever achieved a B, and not an A, not the top rating, which is absolutely unbelievable. So it's got ground source heat pumps in the main. It's got all of this insulation, external insulation, thermal mass, and it doesn't reach the top of the tree, which was very disappointing because at the time we were going to do a joint press release about this wonderful house getting a grade A in London. Well, it still hasn't achieved it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I find so difficult about EPCs is getting access, my personal access, to the algorithms that they use, or been able to restructure my design in a way that will meet a grade A. Now, I know we were talking yesterday, and I think you had something up your sleeve, which you might want to mention, Ken. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I do. I've heard rumor that if you have a solar panel of any description and that integrates into your electrical system, even if it's not a very good one, then that jumps you up one grade on the EPC. Now, I don't know that it's true, but sometimes these algorithms that are used by assessors, you can find that you get these anomalies. So you can put on a tiny solar panel, which might have limited, if any, effect, and yet it will jump you up a grade. And I'm sure there'll be all sorts of shortcuts depending on how the algorithm lies. I wonder also, Bob, if between now and 2025, we will see some adjustments to the way that they grade the EPCs, because I think there's a real danger here. And I'll tell you what I think the danger is. Landlords are already struggling on many fronts. They're struggling because they can no longer offset their tax under Section 24 against the interest payments on their loans, which has been a killer for many landlords and the reason why many landlords have sold up. On top of that, no more 10% write down for furnished properties. And on top of that, interest rates trebling or more for many landlords just over the last couple of months. And trying to pass those costs on this is not a boohoo case for landlords. It's just a reality. So what it's meant in reality is many landlords are exiting the sector. The problem that has then given us is then rents are rocketing because there's an undersupply. We're literally putting things on the market and then withdrawing them because there just aren't enough people out there that want to rent out property, because it's now being seen as a more difficult game. It's as simple as that. So now if you then put on top of that the new need for existing landlords that have been happily chugging along there, maybe without a loan and maybe just grinning and bearing the Section 24 issues, all of a sudden to find that they've got to spend either thousands of pounds upgrading to a grade C or sell up, they may choose the latter. And the difficulty that gives you is exacerbating an already undersupplied market. And who this hits most of all, Bob, and this is my concern, is the people at the very bottom. The people that are searching for accommodation that can't afford are going to find that more and more they're pressured to sharing accommodation where they were living together, maybe just a couple in a house. You'll find you have two couples in one house, for instance, in order to be able to afford these rents, which are exorbitant. But by doing this, I just think
so Ken, then you come up against houses of multiple occupation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute nightmare.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just think, and one of the things that on our last interview with Bob, could you explain about ground source heat pumps, how they work and why they didn't work in this instance for you, Bob?
Well, ground source heat pumps are basically like a fridge. So on the back of a fridge, you've got all those sort of wires over the back of it, and they heat up, right? So the fridge takes the heat takes the heat out of whatever's in there and around it and gives the heat off at the back into the room. Well, that's exactly what a heat pump does. It takes heat, either in my case, I did boreholes down into the London clay, and about 90 meters of pipe work underground. That takes the heat. That temperature's around about 10 degrees centigrade. Take the heat out of that and then put it into the building.
Now, in theory, that sounds fantastic, Bob.
In theory, it sounds absolutely brilliant, and it is actually brilliant. It's 1-to-4 efficiency. Yeah. So for every unit of electricity you put in, you're getting 4 units of heat out. Oh yeah, brilliant, absolutely stunning.
So where are the problems?
Well, the problem is, so I've had these for 20 years, and 2 of them, absolutely brilliant. They tick over. They're still going strong after 20 odd years, a bit longer actually, if anything. I don't need a gas certificate each year, so I can offset that against the cost. And when I built the flats, these are new flats, I didn't have to put in the charges for a gas supply. So it makes total sense, and got my money back. But the issue here is that it's really on the maintenance of this equipment and the charges that they charge to come out and maintain them. So you're looking at £200 plus, 250 quid probably, to come out, maintain them, and if there's a problem, they have to come back again, and there's another 200. So you're already up to like 500 quid.
Yeah.
So if you've got problems with them and you're having to get in equipment from abroad, you've got to have somebody just come down, have a look at it, find out possibly what the problem is, then come back again, wait for the part and come. So you're into like 1,000, possibly into loads of money.
And that's if you can find one of these engineers. I know you had a particular problem around Christmas with one, didn't you, Bob?
I did. I had, in our particular case here, we had one go down at Christmas with children in my flats. Oh my God, what do you do? So you ring them up. They can't come down for a month. So in reality, because it was a problem that was more than just a maintenance problem, I decided to take the heat pump out and put a gas supply on. And I put a gas supply on, new combination boiler, all within that month. And
Wow.
that's a new gas supply onto the site.
So it's come full circle, really, hasn't it? It's gone from heat pumps great to actually, are they worth it? And
well, they're still great, but the industry's got to catch up, right? And so they say to you, oh yes, well, this is green energy, yes, and you'll be taking your energy from the electricity given to you from wind turbines. Brilliant. What they don't tell you is that the electricity that comes through the cables, you lose power, you lose energy in delivering it across the country. And in fact, if I stood under a power cable with a fluorescent tube, I could light it up. Have you ever heard that, Ken?
No,
there are farmers who've been taken to court because they've run their farms on dubious pieces of metalwork in the ground, and they would get charged. So you can't do that. But so there are losses on the system. The other thing with heat pumps, which you don't necessarily know, as against a combination boiler, is they have a tank, an enormous tank of water.
Where do you put it?
Well, a question is, where do you put it? Number one, and that's got to be inside. That really isn't outside. And the other thing is, what I don't think they use this in the calculations for the efficiency of them. Those tanks lose heat to the got losses to the outside, and that can be anything up to 25%. It's enormous. Not in the calculations, and the reason it wasn't in the calculations originally with gas boilers was because they said, oh well, it's lost to the house. It's being used by the house. It's not being lost to the outside. Well, yeah, but I don't want
getting it. Yeah,
I don't want heat in the summer from my tank.
Yeah.
Whereas the thing about combination boilers, this is where there's no tank, is that it's absolutely, this is the gas you put in, this is the heat you get out, and then there are no losses from a tank. So there you are. So that's kind of my view on that.
So it looks like there's going to be some sort of, because many landlords, as you know, Bob, are never, under the current algorithm anyway, let me put it this way, a lot of landlords are not going to be able to reach the target of C in order to legally let out their property. One of the upshots of that may be that they choose to sell rather than rent. The second upshot of that may be that there will be some sort of maximum spend requirement.
Yes, there is.
Your head. So they'll say to you, you've got to spend £20,000.
No, it's not
allow you to continue, or whatever the figure is. You know,
it's a lot less. I mean, it's probably
it might be 10,000. I've heard.
No, it's not. It's not 20,000. It's a lot less than that to upgrade.
I don't think. What I'm talking about here is the spend. If you've got a property that will not get to a C, let's say you're an E at the moment, and the best you can get it to is a D, then I understand that under the legislation, they may allow you to continue to rent it, provided you can prove that you've spent an amount of money.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And that amount of money is going to be somewhere between, I don't know, 5 or 10,000, I would guess.
Yeah.
Where you can say, well, look, I've spent £5,000 on it. We're still only a D. And they'll go, okay, well, you've done what you can in this instance. Yeah. That's something that may come out of this, I understand. Okay. Because I'm just thinking, there's no way everyone's going to make that C.
Well, I think if I was a landlord with, and I wasn't a limited company, then I would be thinking, well, and I've got, say, 10 properties. I would personally, I still think it's good to have your money in property. I would sell off some of the properties, pay off your mortgage on as many as you can, and rent out the mortgage free. That would be my view on the, and that's essentially what I've done. I don't have any mortgages on any of my
properties. And we've given that advice on many occasions to many landlords, Bob. We've found that consolidation has proved the right route to go. And of course, in that consolidation, you can then pick and choose the ones that are more likely to be higher efficiency and therefore easier to rent out post 25 or 29, as it were.
Right. Okay. So on just a point on the efficiency thing, you did mention about putting solar panels on the roof. Yes. And you mentioned about putting a minimum amount of solar panels on the roof. Well, the question is, you can actually do something quite sensible if you want to with a single panel on the roof. And if you've got a gas boiler, if you preheat the water from the main, so when the main comes into the building, it splits off. One goes to the boiler and the other one goes to your taps. This is your cold taps, which you've got to have a supply to. The one that goes to the boiler will give you a supply to your bath, for example. If you can raise the temperature just by a few degrees, you can get into double figures of energy efficiency. Because one of the things about gas boilers is, and this is why you've got a sort of 24, 25 kilowatt boiler, whereas you don't really need all that, is you need this big power, or they use a big power of gas to get the water up quickly and the system working. Whereas if you can preheat that water, then you're away. Now, Ideal Boilers did have a system like this, and we put one in just locally on a development we did. And what happened there was the small PV panel was linked to a small tank. The tank heated up with water, which was water coming off the mains. And so the water hitting the boiler would be preheated. And it's that initial bit where you stop the boiler trying to trick it into not bursting into miles of flame that can give you these energy efficiency.
Yeah,
so that's one thing. The other thing with a single panel is that you can use it to for an emergency source. So you can link it to a battery, and the battery, some of these batteries can take 2 kilowatts of power. So you gradually build up your power in your battery, and then you can use that battery to power other things in your house. The outcome from the output from these batteries would be alternating current, so you can link it to a fridge or whatever you want to choose it to. Now, the thing I'm actually looking at and will activate in the new year is that if you want this battery connection, it's all got to be tuned properly and done correctly. So there's a company which is called, what is it? Jackery, Jackery, which are an American company, I think, but they've got offices in Merton, I think. So what they've got is a system of PV panels, and the PV panels are balanced to a battery, either a 2 kilowatt battery, and the price range between, for the 2 kilowatt, run about 2,700 down to a lower one at 1,340. So the bit I'm going to be looking at in the new year is if I buy one of these, it's supplying energy to my building. You can't put it directly into the whole system, but you can use it as backup. The battery that you have, you can plug various devices in it and make it work. So I'm going to look to see whether that would comply with NEPC.
Well, there are also other schemes. I know that Tesla, for instance, do a battery, and that will link into solar, linking straight into your power supply as well.
Lots of money.
And I have a friend. I have a friend that's actually done it, and he's literally in the summer not using any grid electricity through it. But like you, he's so into it that he's prepared to put that extra investment in. And obviously, for most landlords, that they're going to be looking to what they can do to still maintain their business at
So
minimal cost. And as you rightly say, these batteries right now come at a very, very pricey tag.
So we looked at our house at the coast, and we were going to buy an electric vehicle, a cheap one, a Leaf, second hand, make sure the batteries have got plenty of life in them. And we were going to drive it down to West Wittering and discharge the batteries into that which was left over, discharge it into the batteries on the site, and then that would help, as well as the solar panels. That would help to ameliorate the situation. But it was all too costly.
Not only that, it's interesting you say that, because I don't know if you know, but again, with Tesla, they actually already have a system devised, and other companies are doing this as well, where there's going to be the ability to trade EV battery power in peak times. So it would reduce your electricity bill. So rather than have these power stations that come on in peak times, there's enough surplus energy in most electric cars that they could supplement the grid.
Absolutely.
And that does make sense, doesn't it, Bob, from an ecological point of view and from an economical point of view as well. It could be a very good trade. I mean, this is obviously in the future. It's not something that's going to happen.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, when I was looking at it 20 odd years ago, this way of doing it on Norbury, where I ended up was with the military. So the military, they're out in the field, they've got cars, they have to run all their electrical devices and whatever they do, and they run it off the cars. So even then the technology was available, and you could and as I read it at that time, a Land Rover or a Rover, whatever, could supply, if just ticking over, could supply enough electricity for 5 houses. So you've got a backup supply to 5 houses, and you could use it to charge your batteries up if that was appropriate.
Yeah. So there's lots of technologies coming, but it'd be interesting to see. I know you're quite involved with agriculture at the moment, and another source of carbon capture as well, aren't you, Bob?
Yeah, this is really important. When I built Norbury, I'm not sure you know this, Ken, but I use granite dust in the screeds and the walls of the building. This is to give it density, to hold more heat, because the granite is very dense, holds heat well, and acts well. And you can buy that granite dust from builders merchant. It's quite normal. But what I also found when I was looking at that particular time was there was this English guy who started off life as an auctioneer in Covent Garden Market selling fruit. Knew all about fruit, made loads of money, bought a farm down in Kent, and started experimenting. And what he experimented with was granite dust. He put granite dust on his land, and his plants grew. His apples grew. He was able to grow the largest apples in our kingdom or queendom at that particular time, and it was absolutely and totally lost. But the reason it was lost was because the chemical farming systems came in, where they were able to produce 10 times the amount of fruit or the amount of maize or whatever it might be from a field. And quite obviously, the granite dust wasn't necessarily as good as that. So his views were lost. I've been working on this for since I found out about him. Been working with the National Records Office and various other people. I've got 28,000 people following this project around the world, all personally selected. And I'm looking to republish his work and say to everybody, look, it's been done before. Just get on with it. Just go out and do it. Feed your plants with this. It will make your land, your soils fertilized. It will fertilize your soils, mineralize your plants, and mineralize the food that we eat. And quite honestly, our health depends upon the minerals that we absorb or don't absorb.
And this is also about carbon capture, isn't it? It's also capturing carbon at the same time.
Absolutely. The most important part. You missed that bit. Poor old Samson Morgan didn't know about that. But you're perfectly right. It's called natural, can't remember the name. But anyway, yeah, it does capture carbon. So when you're putting all these trees on the land to capture carbon, which they do, They don't take minerals. Well, they do take some minerals out of the soil, but you don't end up with a tree with a hole in the ground because it's taken all the minerals. No, it gets its carbon to what it grows from the atmosphere, and so everything else does that grows, as we do. I would guess. Now, the point here is that when you're using this mineral technique with trees, you've got to wait 20 years before the trees grow. You've got to wait a long time before they absorb all this carbon. Whereas if you put the minerals onto the soil, the granite dust onto the soil, it's immediate. All you need to do is wait for the rain, because the rain's slightly acidic. That breaks down the granite dust into a form of material that can be taken up by the plants. It's an absolute no-brainer. And that's
Excellent.
why I've got 28,000 people.
Sounds good.
I could go on the internet, I go on my system now. I could get another 100 today if I chose to. In fact, I get so many that LinkedIn's get very annoyed and say, "What are you doing? This is not right. And you're not paying any fees for it. You're just doing it on the free one." Oh, right, yeah, fine. Anyway, so that's that. But the other thing I wanted to just say to you about heating systems, when I put some of these when I put an air source heat pump on one of my properties, this was in the family, I put a backup system. It's a free energy device. Can you believe that, Ken? Am I really losing my bottle? No, you don't. I knew. You're so straight, Ken. This is unbelievable. A free energy device is a wood burner, because I get the wood off my sites for free.
Of course.
The wood I'm burning is like probably 100 years old. It's very dense. It's a softwood in the main. 4x2 timbers. They're my choice. Bring them down, cut them into logs, and put them on the fire. I need probably, I've got one in my own home here, this free energy device, which we call a wood burner. In reality, if you're going to run it for a day on 4x2 timbers, it needs an IKEA bag full of timber. So everybody who's buying, I don't know, you got one, Kay, you probably have. But
No, I haven't.
No, okay. So this is why you run them off of hardwood, because the hardwood's denser. You don't need so much of it. It's a slower burn. But to be perfectly honest, a lot of people buy wood burners, not like we bought it as a backup system, but they buy it because they think it's going to be lovely, lay down in front of the not an open fire, closed fire. But unfortunately, it's a nightmare, the amount of timber you need. Yeah. And there are new regulations on the moisture content of the timber that people are selling you. I don't know if you know that.
Right, because of the emissions, of course, yeah.
Well, see, the emissions, it's got to burn properly. So at the back of my garage here, the other thing which you might, the tenants, or not the landlords might be interested, I've got a black poplar. Now, black poplars, there's only about 6,000 of them in the UK, but they grow very fast. In 7 years, I can grow my black poplar, which has been pollarded, just like our mate from the chateau. He pollarded his, and he uses them for logs, just like him. And I cut it down, have it cut down, and that timber, which I retain, I leave at the end of the garden, already cut up by the tree surgeons. And in 2.5 years' time, it's ready for burning. So there's another free way of getting your
and it's a renewable source, which is
that's a good one. It's not necessarily flavor of the month for air quality, unfortunately.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And you have to buy a burner which has special numbers attached to it so that it gets the best burn it can possibly have.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thanks very much for popping on the show again. It's lovely to see you, and always nice to get your perspective on things. And your latest projects are always very interesting. And
I really would like to thank you again. You know what I'm going to say. I popped into your office over 20 years ago, 22, 23 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm going to build in Norbury, and you said, "Go on, that's it. Get on with it, boy." We were both young men at the time, and my God, that's been brilliant. Absolutely. Good tenants. The tenants live in better conditions than I do in my in my lovely house in Teddington.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure. It's been a pleasure dealing with you, and we were very glad to meet you and be a part of the ecological development of Norbury. So it's fantastic. But thanks for your time today. Merry Christmas to you and the family, and have a great New Year. And thanks for popping on the show again.
Everybody in your office.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bob. Bye.